Welcome everybody to OP Radio number 2 with special guest OpenSea. In case you missed it, OpenSea joined the City of Optimism yesterday, and we are super excited about that fact. And we've got some of the team here to discuss all things OpenSea and Optimism NFTs. And we've also got some of my colleagues here from OP Labs to join the discussion as well. So before we really get into it, let's give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. I'm going to just let them introduce themselves so I don't butcher any names. Let's start with the OP Labs side. Benji, do you want to tell everybody who you are?
Yes, sir. Hi, guys. I'm Benji. I'm a developer advocate at OP Labs right now. On the NFT side, it's one of my biggest catalysts for getting into crypto. I remember the early days with Deezus Spaces, using the OG like OpenSea, like front end, etc. Like all of that really, really helped me build a cool community in the space and meet some really awesome people. And it's just like an absolute privilege to be able to bring that vibe, that energy, and just that optimism onto our network now. So excited to see that happen. Excited to see some of you guys launch projects. If anyone here, by any chance, is launching a project or has some ideas or wants to do some stuff, whether it's like Dolly NFTs or like just like gaming or profile picture or whatever it is, hit me up. My DMs are always open. And yeah, super stoked and super, super optimistic. So let's get this going.
Thank you, Benji. And may I just say your PFP is immaculate.
We love the codes.
Joanna, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Of course, yeah. Hard to follow that one. My name is Joanna. I am the BD lead of NFT and DAO at Optimism. I recently joined from Coinbase, where my team helped launch the Coinbase marketplace, NFT marketplace. Been in the space since 2017 and just been down this deep down this NFT rabbit hole since then. And yeah, definitely personally a big fan of the OpenSea product and just kind of spent way too much time in professional and personal time on OpenSea. So yeah, personally definitely being super excited about this partnership and glad that we get to see this come to light. Yeah, just last thing to say, just anybody in the audience, working on new collections, please feel free to get in touch. We're looking at new use cases. I think that's something that is very attractive about Optimism being, the home for innovative use cases. And always, my DM is always open, so feel free to get in touch.
Thanks, Joanne. Awesome. Yeah, so we got a couple of the optimistic NFT heavyweights from the OP Lab side with us here today. Let's kick it over to OpenSea. Baki, do you want to kick it off for your side?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Baki. I'm a community manager here at OpenSea. I'm reporting live from the OpenSea handle. I'm super excited. It's kind of my first day, my first Twitter space from the handle. So don't roast me too hard, but I've had a blast getting to know the community. I had a blast getting to know the Optimism community in the last, couple of weeks. I've been doing a lot of outreach to projects, and your communities are absolutely amazing. I love you all.
Oh man, I like the sound effects. Yeah, I might take a chapter out of your book and incorporate that.
I can take it next for us on the OpenSea side. Also plus one on the sound effects. I don't think I've ever heard that before. It's like startled me at first, but adds for a good time in a Twitter space. I'm Stevie. I'm Stevie. I'm the head of community here at OpenSea. Baki and I work really closely in all of our community initiatives here. One of the many things that we're focused on the community side is kind of the deepening of connections for different projects, different creators, for our current chains and for new chains. So obviously exciting week for us to be able to add a new chain here. Parth, I'll pass it your way.
Yeah, hey everyone, super excited to be here. Super excited that we launched yesterday. My name is Parth. I'm on the product team at OpenSea, and I lead some of our multi-chain efforts and our protocol efforts. And yeah, I was crypto class of 2017 and excited to have this conversation today.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you guys here, and we are super excited as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into this. This first question. This is, I envision this as being an open-ended conversation, but I think this will get the ball rolling. And it's obvious that OpenSea is making a push to layer twos, and I'm curious, what's the thinking there? Like, what's the thesis there, and why this push to layer twos? I'm wondering if somebody could explain that to us.
Yeah, I could take a first pass at it. Maybe Parth, if you want to add anything. So I think on the layer 2 side in general, here at OpenSea, we strongly believe that the future is multi-chain. The opportunity that we have with a deep community historically on the Ethereum side, as time passed, Polygon, Clayton, Solana. But I think the more chains that we can add, the better served we are to serve our community by adding more diversity by way of projects to explore, projects to buy into, creators to explore. And then, again, as we add different chains, particularly on the L2 side, that really opens up so many different use cases. It really just gives our community of buyers a lot more depth, adds in a lot more diversity by way of creators from different locations, different styles. Each chain has kind of their own flair to it, and ultimately kind of different price points for our community to buy into as well. So that's a few thoughts on the community side on my end. Parth, anything you want to add there?
Yeah. So kind of if you look historically, like OpenSea has a super rich history on Ethereum. But if anyone uses ETH NFTs, or definitely used it during the bull market, we all kind of know some of the issues with block space scarcity and just high gas prices. And so us as a company, like one of our core philosophies is, as Stevie mentioned, we want to serve NFT customers no matter where they are. And we've been watching chain development very closely and been watching from both the technology and community development point of view as well. And typically we want to enter when there's a certain amount of maturity, where there are communities that have formed, where we think the tech stack has reached a point of stability. And of course, on that side, like Optimism is clearly one of the OGs in the space. L2s for us is also interesting, right? Because I think there's something about deriving your security from like the Ethereum main chain as well, which is always interesting philosophically for us. And then on our side, I think the recent push, I think there's been a couple of things that have really enabled it. So for us, we've just like stabilized and abstracted some of our infrastructure to be more chain agnostic. Like we think NFTs are a digital primitive across a lot of these like different use cases. And then chains are kind of the underlying tech stack. And so we want to make sure we can support all of them from there. And then a really big element for us was also launching Seaport. And so for those not familiar with Seaport, it's a pretty sophisticated piece of marketplace smart contract tech. And it actually lets us standardize a lot of interactions among EVM chains. And so when we think about what chains we want to add or come into, we kind of want to bring our full force into it, right? From both a technology, community, brand, marketing, now Drops, which is a new product line that we've also launched, perspective. And so it was really important for us to build the underlying smart contract on our side, and that we can deploy on some of these new chains, which allows us to have lower gas costs. You can bring in collection and trade offers, and there's even more functionality in the pipeline that brings into it. And so for all those reasons, those are some of the reasons we've been pushing a little bit more on some of these new chains. And frankly, if we stop back and think about it, I think a lot of new development and interesting use cases are going to merge on some of these new chains where there is just lower gas costs and higher throughput.
That is actually a perfect transition to my next question. I'm curious what, if anything, you guys have thought about layer 2s can enable for NFTs, any different use cases. Maybe it's hard to say because they haven't manifested yet, but do you guys think about that over at OpenSea? I'm curious.
Yeah, I can take first crack at it. So I think, as we all know, it's just really, really hard to predict what use cases emerge. I've personally kind of given up on some of those things. And I think that's like the beauty of innovation, right? You just want to keep your ear to the ground and just watch what's happening and just give builders a chance to build, and let them surprise you. And that's kind of like a big OpenSea philosophy as well, right? It's one reason we like to index all NFTs, and we really strive to be a permissionless marketplace where you don't have to go through any form or anything like that to actually be listed on OpenSea. And so for us, we're always very close. We're always watching very closely to see what happens. I think if you go from a first principle basis, anything that requires low gas costs and high throughput, but wants the security of Ethereum from either a philosophical standpoint or from an actual technical perspective as well, is interesting. You're going to see developments there. We think we're watching pretty closely what's happening around like gaming or ownership-based utility NFTs. So mirror writing NFTs is actually a really good example. I think that's also onboarding a certain set of new users. One of the things is, I think also when we think about L2s, it's also different like regional biases. And so we saw this a little bit earlier, right? We added Clayton, which is a pretty big South Korean blockchain. And so it was cool to kind of see the development that happens in different regions and areas, because those communities form differently as well. And so for Optimism, one thing that really attracted us is that you guys have a very big Thai community, which was surprising to me when I was first learning a lot more about different communities there, but has actually been very attractive because that develops a little bit differently. There's different language, different culture, and I think you'll start to see use case innovations that are relative to that region as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's been some really great art that has resulted. I love that Thai flavor, both in the food and with the art. So we love our Thai community. That was some really great stuff. Thank you guys for that. I also just want to say, like, if it isn't obvious, like from a user perspective, as an appreciator of NFTs, I remember during this bull market and I was looking at NFTs, and sometimes it costs more in fees to get the NFT than the NFT cost itself. And so that was like prohibitively expensive for me, and I'm sure for many others. So it looks like those times are at an end. So that's very good news for all us NFT appreciators. Okay, so you guys, Baki, I think you especially during this whole process and this launch with Optimism, you had a chance to work with some of these creators and some of these collections on Optimism, and I'm just curious how that experience has been.
For lack of a better word, it's been amazing, honestly. So I was honored to meet so many amazing communities. Just to shout out a few, like Optimisms, Boardtown, OptiChads, just like some great creators that really welcomed me with like open arms. Got to learn a lot more about the culture of Optimism and the culture of each individual community. It was a really great experience, honestly. And then like after the announcement, after the launch, I had a few creators reach out to me, and they really wanted a Thai language channel inside of our Discord. But after I told them, we may not particularly have like a Thai speaker moderator, and they volunteered to self-moderate this channel. So now, if you go into the OpenSea Discord, there's a Thai language channel in there, and it's being moderated by the projects that you already know, by the moderators that you already know. So I think it's a really great way that we've been, working together with the creators to like facilitate this community building with OpenSea.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna cue this up for Benji. I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I want to talk a little bit about public goods, and especially as they relate to NFTs and art. Because for those listening, if you're not sure, we're big into public goods here at Optimism. We donate 100% of the sequencer profits to fund public goods. And lest you think we're being altruistic here, we think that's good not just for the ecosystem, but for us as well. It gives an opportunity for projects that may not have a business model to actually fund and sustain themselves. And so I see a direct parallel or connection there with art, because oftentimes art is underfunded. It's just underfunded and underappreciated. People don't, sometimes when there's budget cuts, it's like the art program or the music program is the first to go. And so, we've got some ambitious ideas here at Optimism about, creating this space where creators can kind of do what they want, and they're not forced into siloed into these sort of legacy systems. And I think, with this watershed moment of OpenSea coming to Optimism, it's just I think it's a good time to talk about public goods and these new possibilities that are opened up by these new funding models and by NFTs. Benji, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, this is my favorite part about all of this. Before I dive into like why exactly with OpenSea and NFTs, just really quickly on what a public good is. There are many definitions out there, but like in my mind, like two simple ones. Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who made the internet literally as we know it, made it as a public good, made no money off of it, no VC funding, no one funded him to make the internet, but it became the internet because that's the power of creating like open source software and just letting it out and not having funding be an issue for that. So essentially that led to this creation of the internet. Right now we live in a world where if you want to go and you want to plant trees and you want to raise money to plant trees, no one's going to give you money because they're like, oh, there's no return on investment. Optimism's entire thesis right now is to kind of go against that by having all 100% of our sequencer revenue. So your OpenSea activity, your trading activity, your contract deploying activity, essentially all the fees there go into this giant pot of retroactive public goods funding, which allows us to then retroactively fund people who create public goods. So going back to the example of the person planting trees, previously they went to a VC, for example, it's like, hey, give me like X amount to plant trees. The VC would probably like be like, no, because it makes no sense. There's no return on investment. But now that same person can then go to the same VC and be like, hey, give me, X amount to plant trees. There's this massive pot of retroactive public goods funding made possible by these transaction fees, these activities, and these like revenue that's generated from usage on this blockchain network, aka Optimism. So there is like a light at the end of the tunnel, and you kind of like disrupt the funding model for open source software and for public goods, specifically public goods on Ethereum and Optimism. NFTs play a large role within that because NFTs obviously bring about a ton of like really cool activity on the blockchain, really like cool use cases. And, you will be rest assured that every single thing that you do on Optimism will contribute to this like RPGF. You can read up about it. There's like a few articles out there too. There's some blog posts. Highly recommend like looking into what that is. But I think that's what most excites me. I think this is like one of the times where NFTs are directly impacting public goods, which could be really cool.
Yeah, so TLDR, I mean, if you're an artist, and we all know it's hard to make it as an artist, but there's an opportunity, I think, here in crypto and on Optimism to create your art and share your art and sell your art. And also, some of that will also go towards helping other artists potentially, right? And it's not just NFTs or art, like it's open source software too at this point. There's a lot of different stuff. Right now, it's those things, but it could be a lot more in the future. That has yet to be seen, but there's a lot of potential, and it's very exciting to be sure. And I'm glad you mentioned trees, Benji, because now that we've moved to proof of stake, Ethereum has cut its energy usage down by about 99%. So we're environmentally sustainable now.
Let's go. But yeah, if anyone has any public goods questions, please like send them my way. I love talking about this stuff. It's super fun.
And isn't it part of the history of Optimism? Like you guys also got public goods funding, right? Because it started as a nonprofit. So it's kind of just cool seeing everything just emerge through this novel source funding, basically.
Yeah. So just to quickly answer that, I think one of the reasons for Optimism to be structured in the way it is today is the core team initially starting out found it difficult because they were building it as a public good, essentially, to find funding. And we've recognized like a massive hole in the world right now where public goods just are not getting funded. And that's kind of problematic, right? Like, for example, the internet was a public good and it led to everything that we're doing today. And we should incentivize the creation of public goods, and people who do create public goods should not feel like financial martyrs, but instead should get paid like NBA athletes. That's the future that I think we want to try to decide.
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse, but I mean, I think art is a public good. Like aesthetics are important. Art is very important. It's like one of the most important parts of being human, I think. And yet it so often goes underappreciated. So I think there's a lot of interesting crossovers. Like we actually have a lot of artists and musicians at OP Labs, and so we're definitely thinking about this. And we're all NFT appreciators, which is why we're so excited about the launch of OpenSea yesterday. Speaking of which, I'm curious to hear from the OpenSea team if you guys have any favorites. Were there any that caught your eye, any of these Optimism collections, and maybe you could tell us a bit about why?
Sure, I think I can start us off. So initially, my eye was caught by Optimism. I felt like their community was super active and loud and proud and optimistic. Not to be corny with the Optimism joke, but they're just so happy in there. I even learned that the Thai people laugh using the number 5. So when I saw like 555s being spammed everywhere, I learned that it's because they're laughing, not because they're trying to represent Gary Vee or anything, or just throwing numbers around. I really like Boardtown. I feel like Boardtown had really unique art, something that I, was pleasantly surprised to see it. It wasn't just a generative PFP collection, but rather it was like something true to the artists themselves. That's a very vibrant community where everyone's really broing down and working out together. I think one of the Chads was doing 1 push-up per sale after launch or something. I hope he got a good workout. But that's just like, that's just the start. I mean, I think I reached out to like 10 to 15 collections, and they were also so funny and interesting. Motorheads was super cool. Dope Wars, which is actually a project from Mainnet that then transitioned to Optimism, and now they get a chance to be back on OpenSea. So that was really cool to actually posted an awesome graphic last night that we retweeted this morning. The collections are awesome. Like, it's tough to pick one because you just have like such a large and vibrant community. They're all amazing.
Yeah, I
Yep.
can go next. I'll cheat and do two. So one is the category of writing NFTs. I think is pretty cool, and so I've been pretty impressed by what Vera has been able to do. And I've used Substack. I've posted on Substack before, and I think this feels like the next evolution of it. So just very excited to just kind of see that development that's happening there. And then a specific collection wise, echoing kind of what Baki's just said about Dope Wars, I had a guild and loot and stuff like that back in the day. And so was pretty early in the Dope War ecosystem. And it was actually one of the things, it was super interesting when they did migrate to Optimism. And I think they're just building a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. So that one's also a personal favorite of mine.
Yeah, and for me, I try to stay agnostic, thinking about community building at OpenSea. There's so many amazing communities and so many amazing projects, but there were a couple that caught my eye. I did think Boardtown is pretty cool. I thought it's like this kind of like, Asian looking style art, Japanese like style art, but also still incorporates kind of like the animals piece. And I thought they did a really good job of blending it. And then more recently, I was like a little resistant to the world of generative art previously, but I've kind of been going down the rabbit hole, and I was digging on Octava's last week or a couple weeks ago, and I thought what they're doing is also pretty cool. So those were two that caught my eye. But like Baki said, so many amazing projects, and I trust it's in the very early days of seeing what's to come as well.
Oh yeah, I think this is definitely we're in the early days. I mean, we only reached out 10, 15. I think from this point moving forward, I think it sounds like Optimism really wants to stimulate the NFT ecosystem. So I'm excited to see what beauty, what art, what communities kind of sprout from this initiative.
Yep. I think that old crypto cliche that we're still early definitely rings true. But it's so good to see how far we've come. Because I remember, 6 months ago, there wasn't too much. And looking at it now, there's some really cool art on chain, the collections and projects you guys just mentioned, to be sure. So, and there's only going to be more coming. Okay, so Joanna, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I just wanted to first give a shout out to Michael. I see he's in the audience here from our data science team, who actually created the Dune dashboard of OpenSea, Optimism, NFT, transaction volume, and other metrics. Quickly after we announced it yesterday, and I was just looking at the user stats and just preface by saying, layer 2 NFTs are still nascent, and we were still seeing, very healthy. I think it's 100 plus unique addresses in the first 24 hours, and some of these popular, we mentioned a lot of them already. Collections have topped that charts. Boardtown, OptiChats, and one more. I wanted to maybe just give my quick plug here. My favorite NFT on Optimism is actually our own creation called Optimism Quest NFTs. And for those who don't know much about it, it's basically our way of gamifying engagement on Optimism, right? So one thing that we ask our users and community about, what is the most difficult thing about, getting involved in Optimism, and I think the kind of dominant answer is, we don't know outside of just like the one app that we came in to use for, like what else, what other apps are out there, and we don't know where to begin. So this Quest system is really meant to help you with a framework of 15 actually I'm sorry 18 quests already available for you to just try out, right? These 18 different apps that are kind of nominated by our community as the most interesting apps currently on Optimism. So you can just go into any of them and take a quick quiz after you complete the quest, I guess, for lack of a better word, and learn about them. And then, throughout this process, you learn about the app, but at the end, you also get this commemorative NFT as a reward. So yeah, I'm very super proud to see that this NFT has been one of the most popular so far on OpenSea.
That's a great call out, Joanna. And for those listening and want to participate in quests, go to app.optimism.io/quests, and you can participate in this new initiative that Joanna just described. That's been received very well by the community. I think people really love it. And you get, as she said, you get an NFT after you've gone through that process and learned about these projects. You could collect a free NFT, a really great NFT, I might add, a TV baby. So, and speaking of directing people to places, you'll see pinned to this space OpenSea's announcement. And if you click in the first link of that tweet of their announcement, you can see the top collection of the Optimism NFTs on OpenSea. So if you're curious or your interest has been piqued by some of these great NFTs and collections that some of the speakers have described, make sure you click that link and check it out. If you're listening to this later, just go to OpenSea and check out the collections there on Optimism.
Yeah, and also quick plug, you should join our Discord if you guys have feedback, comments, we're constantly listening. And one cool thing about the OpenSea integration as well is like you can also bridge tokens. And so if you have ETH and you want to try Optimism, you can go into your wallet sidebar and bridge over, and then you can start buying and selling. And onboarding is one thing I think we're all trying to make a little bit easier as well. So any feedback on that side is also appreciated.
Oh yeah. All right. Does anybody, I feel like we might be winding down here. Does anybody have anything else they want to add or talk about? All right, guys. It sounds like that's a no. This one's going to be short and sweet. I want to thank my colleagues at OP Labs, Benji and Joanna, for joining us. And I definitely want to give a huge shout out to the team at OpenSea for joining us. Such a great and smooth launch yesterday. And we're so glad to have them in the Optimism ecosystem. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a lovely day. Stay optimistic. We'll see you on the internet.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, OP Squad. We're excited.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. If you guys saw, I put in my red hearts for love optimism.
Nice.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Adios.
Thank you.